Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. I'm Shamala Pula and here's what we have in the bulletin. 6 arrested, illegal firearms seized in St. Elizabeth operation. Integrity Commission under fire, civil society groups cite shortcomings and lack of transparency. And later in sports, reggae girls look for second win against Peru today. Now the details. 6 people, including a woman, have been arrested in Warminster in St. Elizabeth. This is in connection with the seizure of illegal firearms and ammunition during a targeted operation this morning. Assistant Commissioner of Police Calvin Allen is the commander for Area 3 Police Division.
Seizure also of some 38 assaulted rounds, some 6 persons, including a female, taken into custody from that operation. Over in Clarendon, SSP Makala team conducted a targeted raid which led to the seizure of 3 motor vehicles. One of those vehicles have already been identified as having been stolen. One of the persons arrested is identified also as an escapee involving shooting out of the St. Elizabeth space.
ACP Allen says Manchester is also seeing some successes.
Superintendent Kerry Duncan team, a very robust team up in Christiana, and fully supported by the area fugitive apprehension team, conducted a targeted raid in the Christiana space. And unlike the scenarios that played out in St. Elizabeth and Clarendon, where those persons chose to peacefully surrender, this individual chose to confront law enforcement, and our officers respond as they were trained to do. A Glock 40 pistol was recovered during this fatal confrontation.
Civil society groups are pointing to the Integrity Commission's shortcomings and external pressure as the main reasons why many Jamaicans don't see the anti-corruption watchdog as a big deal. Groups like Jamaicans for Justice and National Integrity Action think the Commission hasn't done enough to educate people about what it does. A recent national poll commissioned by R.J. Aglina found that a whopping 57% of respondents didn't have an opinion about the Integrity Commission. Of those who did, 23% viewed the Commission positively, while 20% had a negative view. Principal Director of the National Integrity Action, Daniel Archer, questioned whether politics influenced the responses.
We would perhaps want to be fair to all sides and ask whether or not the conversations surrounding the IC have become so political that people have tuned out. And we are well cognizant in our own society that once things become political and you're not a diehard fan of either party, you're not going to pay any attention to it. You're just going to say, well, it's something political, so you close your ears to it. That, I think, is perhaps one of the explanations. It's data, so you can pull data in any direction you want to pull it. But in the circumstances of the ICE, what is abundantly clear is that they have not done enough in respect of public education.
Ms. Archer is also questioning whether Jamaica's internal laws are a contributing factor to the IC functionality and effectiveness.
We can have dialogue with people, explain to them what corruption is. And because for me, the Integrity Commission is the designated authority for the whistleblower law, I think there needed to be much more around that to say, listen, it's okay to be an informer if it is safe for you to do so. Do a little bit more public advocacy on the need for that law to be reformed that I haven't heard anything about with the Joint Select Committee reviewing it. How do you ensure that you can inform safely?
Meanwhile, Jamaicans for Justice believes that addressing the issue requires a grassroots approach.
There was a Don Allison poll in 2023 that was done by NIA, and it had indicated as at December of that year that public satisfaction with the Integrity Commission had been relatively stable, but the satisfaction had moved from 40% in 2021 to 38% in 2023. I can't help but to wonder what extent is your figures, your own data with that? Does it mean that there's less satisfaction with the Integrity Commission because people don't know much about it.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced plans to build a high-security prison in Jamaica. Mr. Holness cites the need for improved facilities due to the current condition of prisons on the island, but a timeline was not given. Currently, Jamaica has 11 correctional facilities, including 6 for males, 1 for females, and 4 for juvenile offenders. These facilities are operated by the Department of Correctional Services on behalf of the Ministry of Justice. But although Jamaica boasts the lowest incarceration rate in the region, Prime Minister Andrew Holness acknowledges that the existing prisons require upgrading.
To ensure that those people who we are currently incarcerating, those very dangerous, high-value criminals, are not able to stay from within the walls of the prison and direct crime outside. So that's where, so in terms of building prisons, that's where our financial effort will be to build a high-security prison where the prisoners that we currently have and those who we will arrest will not be able to stay in those prisons and influence crime outside. So that's where our prison is right now.
But Mr. Holness did not give a timeline as to when this will happen.
We haven't invested in prisons. It is a politically sensitive issue, primarily because of the view that crime is heavily a social issue rather than a matter of choice. And from a political standpoint, you would recall the situation when a former British Prime Minister visited Jamaica and offered a prison and the problems that that created.
However, it is a matter Mr. Holness says the government is committed to, as some of the facilities are badly in need of repair and upgrading.
The old ones are really a humanitarian crisis. We have prisons that are more than 100, well, almost 200-300 years old, old buildings. And that is not reflective of the modern society that we're trying to build. So we're not seeing incarceration as the solution, but it is a part of what needs to happen.
Classes have resumed at the St. James High School today after they were suspended on Tuesday following a dispute between the principal and the board chairman. Speaking at Wednesday's post-cabinet press briefing, Education Minister Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon said the issue was settled following a meeting with the ministry and the school's leadership Tuesday afternoon. However, she stressed that in such a situation, the ministry would need more legislative power to act decisively.
They were working through the interpersonal challenges. And, in Jamaica, we have interpersonal challenges across the board. It's unfortunate when it seeps into the leadership of our schools, but we're going to have to deal with it. And we are dealing with it quite strongly and frontally. And we're even looking at our regulations to look at how we can change those to ensure that if there are any issues in a school, that there is more latitude for us to act. The law doesn't give me much leeway in terms of stepping in schools. And I think it is something as Jamaica we have to look at.
Tackling school violence through art. It's a concept being promoted by the Deans of Discipline in the Education Ministry's Region 6 as part of efforts to improve discipline and promote a greater level of peace in schools. Krista Campbell reports.
A month before the yearly Peace Day celebrations in schools, Deans of Discipline in Region 6 had students in St. Catherine sharing their solutions to school violence through the use of art. It comes at a time of increasing concern about bullying, specifically cyberbullying among students.
Bullying has now transcended to what is now called social media. And it is not done to exhibit or show power or control, but it's for the views and the likes.
The art allows us to channel complex emotions like anger, frustration, or sadness into constructive ways. Painting, writing, or playing music are very helpful to process difficult experiences, and find inner peace.
When you build character and build individuals in terms of their self-esteem, once they are properly empowered, then whatsoever they practice at school.
The fact that they could have designed, developed these particular art pieces is a reflection of their strength, is a reflection of their capacity to think about challenging issues like violence and bullying and cyberbullying, and to articulate in their own way, through the arts, possible solution.
13 schools participated in the art competition, and the top 3 winners were selected at the first Youth Forum and Symposium under the theme Cultivating a Culture of Peace. Director of the Safety and Security in Schools Unit of the Education Ministry, Richard Troop, noted a recent national assessment of students' perception of school safety under the auspice of former Education Minister Favour Williams.
We made representation to her to ask if we could administer the survey not just within those 34 schools but nationally. 331 schools participated, over 11,000 participants. 55% of the participants said the safest place for them is school. 45% say that bullying and cyberbullying is their greatest threat to their safety.
He stressed the need for parents and other adults to be more proactive in helping to de-escalate school violence that spill over into communities.
Unfortunately, when the violence takes place on the streets, or in the bus park, in spaces, instead of adults intervening, what we're actually seeing is adults commenting, videotaping, yes, condemning, but not necessarily doing what is the right thing to do, which is to intervene, to separate, to counsel, to guide, to reprimand the students.
He noted this sends a dangerous signal to students that they can get away with violence once it is not on school premises.
And I understand the fear factor sometimes. I understand the pushback sometimes, even from students and the parents of the students themselves. But we cannot sit back and allow this mayhem to continue.
Krista Campbell, TVJ News.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. It's now time for the Business Minute.
Data released by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service indicate that the select group of public sector enterprises have a total budget of $622 billion, or 17.86% of GDP. This is programmed at $3.482 trillion during the next fiscal year. The ministry also says the capital budget of these bodies will amount to $102 billion, or 2.93% of GDP. Further afield, an online education company is suing Google over artificial intelligence. Chegg is a company that provides students with homework help and test answers. It relies heavily on Google to send internet users to its site when it asks questions. But now that the search engine incorporates AI into its search, it can provide answers on its own page. Chegg claims Google forced it to supply proprietary content to be included in those results. Google says the claim is meritless and claims its AI overviews send traffic to more sites. Chegg revenue has fallen 24% in the past year, but the reality is its trouble started much sooner. Chegg stock reached a high of $113 per share at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic into 2021. It closed Tuesday at $1.07. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Carrie Simpson.
Now, a preview of Wednesday's health report. In this evening's health report, we'll look at radiology.
Radiologist is like the central hub of medicine because everybody needs us. The surgeon needs us to look in for them. The gynecologist needs us to look in for them. The neurosurgeon needs us. The psychiatrist needs us to look into the brain for people who come in abnormal behavior, rule out some tumor in the brain as a cause of this. So we are the central hub. You have appendicitis, the belly is pain and tender, before the surgeon goes in, we do a CT or an ultrasound to make sure that it's really that for truth and the extent if there's an abscess and all of that.
That's the health report in Primetime News at 7. And now for today's healthy living tip. Concentrate on your breathing, meditate or pray, and sing silently to yourself. Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley announced the cabinet reshuffle Tuesday following the resignation of Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology Marcia Cadell. The reason given, a lack of alignment with government principles. Several new appointments were also added, including Kay McConney as Minister of Economic Affairs and Investment and Jonathan Reed as Minister of Innovation, Industry, Science and Technology. Ms. Mottley expressed confidence in the new appointees. On the international scene, an Australian couple's vacation took a tragic turn when a fellow passenger died mid-flight on a Qatar Airways flight from Melbourne to Doha. The woman collapsed in the aisle, and despite efforts to save her, she died. Afterward, cabin crew placed her body next to the couple, causing shock and discomfort. The couple say despite the trauma, they are still trying to move forward with their vacation. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Sandy Williams.
We take another break. Sports is next.